there's a real difference, isn't there, between being someone who disagrees with the concept of vaccinations and someone who's looking at the situation and just thinking, is it really realistic to think that this government is going to be able to vaccinate 67 million people by April in order to set us free?
Well, as I wrote in the column, I think it's important to apply the roadworks test,
Yes, I loved this.
right?
Explain it for us.
So, you know what it's like. You come up against this big sign, and the bridge is closed, and it announces that that it's going to be open on, say, the 19th of December. And what does every single Briton know? That when you come up against this bridge on the 20th of December, it's still going to be closed. And in
Absolutely.
fact, it may be closed for the next 10 years.
Yep.
I mean, I hate to slander a country that I have great affection for, but logistically, this place is incredibly slow. It doesn't get things done fast. If there's some construction being done, some building going up, it's going to be behind schedule. So I think we're being unrealistic in imagining that we can simply magic 67 million people into having two vaccinations carefully timed apart uh, in a very short period of time. I think it's unlikely. And therefore, what I think we need to concentrate on is the fact that, you say April, only until April. There's no only. That is a very long period of time to continue to keep businesses in a state of dormancy, to expect restaurants to uh, uh, serve no customers. I mean, for business, there's no such thing as being only closed for the better part of a year. And furthermore, April is optimistic. I'm hearing a lot of June or maybe until next autumn. So, I mean, the original working title of my column last week was Hold Breath, Turn Blue.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, for so many folk who are at the rough end of a lockdown, they simply cannot afford another 6 months of this. And it's very easy, isn't it, for people in the public service who live gilded lives and have their salaries to tell us to hold on. But for some people, it's just not possible to hold on. And I'm starting to become increasingly fearful about what world we're going to emerge in come April.
Um, I am very concerned about all these restrictions now that we've brought them in. This is true of all regulation in government. It's really easy to bring them in. It's really hard to get rid of. I mean, the chances of our having to walk around in Sainsbury's in masks next summer are, 95%.
Yeah.
But what we can't lose sight of is all these micromanagements of our lives don't work. They don't work epidemiologically. There are now 22 different studies of all the countries around the world, some of which have brought in hardly any regulations, some of which have completely buried their societies, like in Peru. There is no correlation between government policy and mortality, none. And therefore, Boris Johnson is constantly telling us now that there's a vaccine in sight. We just have to hold our nerve, because we've come this far and we've made so many sacrifices. So we can't let our gains go. What gains? We've gained nothing, and that's what this government is not going to let go of. It's never going to want to sign on to the reality that we have made many, many sacrifices and destroyed our economy for nothing.
Absolutely. And I think you make a really important point in your column too about the idea of what's temporary. Because as you point out, if you're very lucky, you get 81 years on this earth. And already we're having to accept that 1/80th of our lives are going to be blighted by these restrictions. And Lionel, for so many people, They don't have 80 years left. I mean, for people who are battling terminal illness or who are older, we can't necessarily wait.
That's exactly it. I mean, we're being told to hold on. It's only a year, or it'll only be a couple of years, and then maybe by 2025 we can get back to normal. There's no only here. I mean, it's very hard for us to get our heads wrapped around the whole idea of mortality. So in our ordinary lives, we like to think of, only a day, only a week, and only a year. But the horror of it is that a year is a really large proportion of this small amount of time you have on this earth. And the way that this contagion has been handled by government is blighting a huge proportion of our experience of life on this earth. And I don't take it as a small matter, not in terms of my life and not in terms of everyone else's.
No, I certainly don't. I'm furious about it. I mean, on the other side of the argument, though, Lionel, I've got lots of people accusing me today of being a pessimist and trying to rain on Boris Johnson's parade because this is his big moment and we should be thankful and we should be celebrating. But you write in your column that, in fact, you're a professional party pooper and you actually think it's your job sometimes to pick holes in this situation. Personally, I think we have a right to do that as well, given we have been made so many false promises by our leaders over the course of this pandemic.
I think that it is responsible to be only modestly celebrative. That doesn't mean, being so skeptical that you discourage people from taking a vaccine that is perhaps very effective and prevents you from getting a disease that you're better off not getting. So my own feeling is one of wait and see. Just looking at it as a story, I mean, isn't it a little bit disturbing to administer a vaccine to potentially the entire human race when we don't know what its long-term effects are? We can't know. It hasn't been in existence for a long time. So isn't that a little concerning? I'm not going to be at the front of the queue. And I'm also not going to make any broad announcements of, about whether people should take it. How should I know? The information is not in.
Well, it's interesting seeing the skepticism growing in countries like France, where public polling shows that potentially 60% of the population do not want to take the vaccine. It's not so high in the UK, but I see our leaders going down a very worrying path, and we've seen them do it before on issues like Brexit and Donald Trump, which is to immediately slam someone for even asking a question about whether they want to take this vaccine, put them into the camp of being an irresponsible anti-vaxxer, whereas actually they're not the discussions that are going on, are they? I mean, I speak to people every day who have had all sorts of vaccines who are still raising questions and just wondering, well, do I need it? I mean, for example, in my case, I've had COVID. I've still got the COVID antibodies. Everyone's telling me I will need to have the vaccine, but that doesn't seem to be backed up by science.
It's perfectly rational to question whether or not you should put something in your own body. And, it's a radical thing to do. So it requires a great deal of trust. I don't do anything without doing a fair bit of homework. I don't even buy anything on Amazon without reading the reviews first. So why wouldn't I read the reviews on a vaccine? Well, one of the things that I find distressing about this whole vaccine business is that it's one thing to encourage a population to get vaccinated because of a desire to not become ill and also to not infect other people. That's entirely wholesome. But there's a little subtext here that you have to get the vaccine or you'll never get out of the restrictions. We'll never let you out of the house. We'll never allow you to walk around without a mask. We'll never let you go to a football game. you're not going to be allowed to go to a restaurant. And so that the purpose is no longer medical, it's political.
Yeah. And in my case, I will no longer be able to get on a plane to see my mum, dad, and sister in New Zealand. And to be honest, that probably will prompt me into getting the vaccine, because the risk will be worth it for me. But I think there's a lot of people who won't want to be at the front of the queue, as Lionel Shriver says. Look, it's an absolutely fascinating column. You summed up how I felt. I wish I'd written it, to be honest. That is Lionel Shriver, author and columnist for The Spectator, who has written a brilliant piece in this week's magazine, We Need a Dose of Vaccine Realism.